Hi, I'm going to do a drawing video tutorial here related to one-point perspective drawing. And I'm going to be using the idea of an imaginary bookshelf that I'll be showing you how I would go about drawing the different boards and angles and different shelves and sides and edges and bottoms and tops and stuff like that. It'll be similar to this, but I'm simplifying a little. And I'll show you what I've just sort of started with. I'm going to be doing two of them. So I've just sketched out what would be the front edge. This would be the side of the bookshelf. I've done that 2 times, and I've also just sketched out estimating where the heights of the shelves will be, and that is the front of the shelf, the front part of the shelf. And because the back part will look different because of perspective. So let me transfer these heights over here. That one's already pretty obvious. So I have my front border, bottom shelf, front of the top shelf, and the sides. And the main thing I need to think about first is how I am situated in relation to said bookshelf. Am I standing up, and are my eyes up here? Is it a tall one? Is it sort of short and I'm lying on a bed and I'm down here? Am I looking over here? So I could sort of be looking at this anywhere from all sorts of different angles. I am assuming that I am looking at it from somewhere inside. So I'm seeing the parts of the shelves that recede back into space. And I'll stop that. But you'll see what I'm talking about. So I want to choose and identify and make sure I know both the height of my vision relative to the bookshelf, as well as how I align vertically with the bookshelf. So this mark indicates what I am calling my point of view. And that is a combination of both this horizontal line of sight, often called the horizon, which gets confusing because we're talking about inside in a bookshelf, and I think of horizon as out in the big world, where there's sky and beach and stuff like that. But this one I'm going to call the vertical line of sight. These things have lots of different names, but the idea is that I'm trying to imagine that I'm standing, I don't know, somewhere down here, and I'm about this tall relative to this particular bookshelf. And so what will appear to happen is that all the shelves that are the bookshelves, which are all parallel with each other, will appear as though their side edges are angling towards this point. And this point has a couple, besides being my point of view, it also is known as the vanishing point, where it appears that edges of things that are going back into space will be aiming towards. So I am going to try to just create some perspective guides that my edges will be following. From anywhere where there's a shelf set up. First I'm going to just do the top and the bottom shelves. So these would be following a line like that. Sorry, that would be following a line like this. This, a line like this like that like that. And this is just how they appear. We sort of know in our brains that they're all horizontal bookshelves that books are sitting on. And I am going to now just sort of imagine how far back this particular bookshelf goes. How deep. So I am going to just sort of imagine something like that. And I'm going to extend these down the sides of the bookshelf. And if I've done everything somewhat accurately, these guys should sort of line up with each other. And they'll just sort of automatically intersect with those perspective lines and create their own sort of back edge, back rectangle. So that kind of it does represent, this one right here represents the top of the bookshelf. And this is the bottom. And I'm going to have two more shelves. One is going to be this height, and I want to understand what the edges do. And the other is going to be at about this height. Hopefully that's somewhat close to thirds. But it's the same idea. I'm going to take the end points of the front edge, and as the side edges recede into space, they will appear as though they are aiming towards this vanishing point where my eyes are sitting on, sitting on the quote-unquote horizon. A lot of times you'll see these sketched out and there'll be more of a whole imaginary horizon line. But this horizon line all depends on how you are situated in relation to whatever it is you're looking at. It will always be the same as your eye level. Do another example over here where I'm going to imagine that I'm looking at it from lower down. So these edges will appear to be aiming towards that, and I am going to connect them where the others, where they meet the back edge. And so a shelf right there would appear something like that. I'll do the same for this third one down here. Same idea. Some imaginary perspective guidelines aiming to my vanishing point, which in this case, this 1 point perspective case, is the same as my point of view, my center of vision. Sometimes it gets called a lot of different things, which is one of the reasons why it can be confusing. But where these guys, now I'll, like the other one, where they meet up with the back edge, or this angling imaginary line meets up with the back edge of the shelf, I'm going to connect them. And now I will erase and knock back all of these imaginary perspective helper guidelines. And I've done this enough to sort of to know what lines, usually know, not always, which lines need erasing, but you can expect to have some extra confusion around that and just have to put some thought into it and imagine what part of the shelf you would be seeing. The way I've set this up is that this particular one is that it's a pretty deep bookshelf, which is one of the reasons why the this bottom trapezoid appears sort of so tall this way, but we know it's actually flat, horizontal, on the ground. So that's what that would appear like. And I'm not going to do shading or other stuff, but for this one, instead of being centered and sort of up high, I'm going to pretend that maybe I'm sitting down and looking at a bookshelf, and I'm sitting on the floor, and my eyes are maybe right about there. Sure, why not? So where my eyes are is what the horizon, horizontal line of sight. And where I'm off center this way is how I'm lined up, and I'm to the left a little bit of the middle of this, or it's to the right of me, depending on your perspective. No, depending on how you want to describe it. Yeah, I guess your perspective. Anyways. So there's my vertical line of sight, horizontal line of sight. I'm probably sitting down here, something. But the same idea, I'm going to take this bottom front edge, and from those points, I'm going to imagine the side edges of this bottom shelf as aiming towards this point here, also called the vanishing point. And same for this one. top front. And left. Fancy word for these lines is, I believe, orthogonal. Can you say that? So you're seeing how sort of just the shifting of where they're aiming is based on where I'm looking at, I'm situated in relation to this. So we'll keep going, and these lines will help me once again figure out what's going on. So I am going to, let me see, I'm going to sketch down here, and I'm going to imagine that would be my top shelf. And because I'm lower, and it is possible to get really exact about this and to measure out sort of exactly how many inches this would be. I am just making an artist choice that it's about that, and bringing that all the way down. This will be the back edge. I will continue that around. That will be the back edge of the bottom shelf. Here's the back edge of this side, the right side. And because everything is shifted this way, now I'll be seeing relatively more of that side than this side. Got a little bit off here, let me see. I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but you certainly could slow down and make sure your lines are straight and accurate. You could also get out your straight edge. Let me see if I can crank this out before the battery poops out. So I'll look at this. Well, let me just strengthen up this top side, not edge, top shelf. And I'll strengthen up this bottom shelf. And then I have two more shelves that I'm going to add in. One is going to be this height. And the other is going to be just barely above where I'm my line of sight, my horizontal. Which means I won't be seeing very much of it all. I'll just mostly be seeing the edge, the front edge of that shelf. So let's start with this top. Sorry, not the top, but this next one down. And create some perspective guidelines from that front point to the vanishing point. Same for this one. And hopefully those will meet up. So I'm seeing the bottom side of that one as well. And this one, this is when things get tricky because it's the same idea. I'm trying to, once again, just take the front edge and aim towards my vanishing point, wherever that happens to be for this certain situation. And for this situation, it's darn close to at the exact same height. So I would be seeing a tiny, tiny part of the lower side of this shelf. Kind of confusing, I know. Or maybe it's not confusing. Erase these guys out. But check that out and do different scenarios of where your point of view is compared to the bookshelf. Go higher, lower, and you'll figure out which part of the bookshelf you'll see more of and less of, and where things will appear to be angling, etc. Look at me, I'm doing some shading. Shading the undersides that are going to be away from the light. I'm not going to do that because that would be receiving a little bit more light. But that's a different subject. So, check it out.